just a gradual withdrawal of confidence. That was the difference between revenge and consequence. Revenge is loud. Consequence is procedural. One afternoon, Samuel called me.
"You should be aware," he said, "that your parents' consortium is no longer considered a protected client within several legacy institutions."
I closed my eyes briefly. "I didn't request that," I said.
"I know," he replied. "That's why it's effective."
I returned to work under a different contract. Advisory only. No public affiliation. No legacy ties. I chose projects that required patience, not performance. The last message from my father arrived through his lawyer. He accused me of betrayal. I read it once, then I deleted it, because by then, I understood the truth they never anticipated. I hadn't attacked them. I hadn't exposed them. I hadn't taken anything from them. I had simply stepped out of the position that made their world safe. And without that protection, the systems they trusted more than me were finally free to do their job. The first sign wasn't an arrest. It was silence. Phone calls that stopped being returned. Meetings that were postponed indefinitely. Invitations quietly withdrawn. In my parents' world, attention was currency. And suddenly, theirs was no longer being accepted. I didn't watch closely. That was another lesson I had learned too late. You don't need to witness consequences for them to be real. Federal oversight came later, not with headlines, but with paperwork. Notices delivered through registered mail. Requests framed as routine. Audits that expanded not because of suspicion, but because of patterns. The Ward Meridian Consortium lost access to short-term financing first. Then long-term partners followed. Projects stalled. Properties were placed under review. Not seized, just paused. Frozen in a way that made recovery expensive and explanations necessary. My parents didn't call me when it started. They called me when it couldn't be stopped. My father asked for a meeting. Not through lawyers this time. Direct. Personal. As if that still meant something. I agreed. We met in a private room at a neutral office building downtown. No family home, no symbols of control. Just 2 chairs and a table. He looked older. Smaller. Not defeated. Uncertain. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I didn't," I replied. He frowned. "You knew what would happen." "I knew what could happen," I said. "There's a difference." He accused me of abandoning my family, of choosing principle over blood, of being ungrateful. I listened. I always had. When he finished, I stood. "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "I stopped preventing the truth from reaching systems that don't answer to us." He didn't respond. That was our closure. I didn't attend the hearings. I didn't follow the filings. I read one summary months later out of professional curiosity, not personal interest. The findings were thorough, predictable. I had already moved on. I opened a small compliance advisory firm under my own name. No partners, no legacy clients, just contracts that required independence and rewarded patience. The kind of work that didn't make headlines, but kept institutions honest. Sometimes people asked about my family. I told them the truth, without details. We're no longer aligned. That was enough. The steel token sits in my desk drawer now. I don't touch it often. I don't need to. It served its purpose once, exactly as intended. My grandfather used to say that power doesn't announce itself. It waits. I understand that now. My parents taught me compliance. They raised me to follow systems, respect rules, and never act on impulse. So when the moment came, that's exactly what I did. I complied. With the truth. My name is Elena Ward. I am 31 years old, and for the last 8 years, I worked as an internal controls and ethics auditor for corporate finance firms across Virginia. My job was simple in theory and brutal in practice. I was paid to say no when powerful people wanted shortcuts. I had built my career on that word. So when my parents invited me to dinner on a Tuesday night, formal, unsmiling, and scheduled down to the minute, I already knew it wasn't about family. In the Ward household, nothing ever was. I arrived at their house in Richmond at exactly 7 p.m. Not early, not late. Punctuality in my family was not politeness. It was obedience. The house looked the same as it always had. Immaculate, silent, expensive in a way that tried very hard not to look expensive. No music, no warmth, just control. My mother, Margaret Ward, barely glanced up when I walked in. She was standing by the window, holding a glass of white wine she never finished. My father, Richard Ward, was already seated at the head of the dining table, hands folded as if he were presiding over a meeting instead of a meal. There was no food, only a leather folder placed neatly in front of his chair. "Sit down, Elena," my father said, his voice smooth and professional. He spoke to me the same way he spoke to junior partners he didn't respect. I sat. "That was fast," I said, glancing at the empty table. "I assumed dinner was involved." My mother smiled thinly. "Business first." Of course. They began explaining the situation as if I weren't their daughter, but a consultant they had hired reluctantly. Ward Meridian Consortium was facing a temporary liquidity issue, a bridge financing arrangement, a timing problem, words designed to soften risk. I listened. I always listened. Then my father slid the folder across the table toward me. "We need your validation," he said. "Just a professional sign-off. You're certified. It keeps things clean." I opened the folder. I didn't need more than 2 minutes. The valuations were inflated. Projected revenue was listed as liquid collateral. Timelines were optimistic to the point of fiction. It wasn't sloppy. It was deliberate. I looked up slowly. These numbers don't hold. The room went quiet. My mother stepped closer to my father's chair, placing her hand on his shoulder. It was a small gesture, rehearsed, united front. "You're being rigid," she said. "Everyone structures deals this way." "No," I replied calmly. "Everyone gets caught structuring deals this way." My father's expression hardened. "We're not asking for your opinion. We're asking for loyalty." That was the moment I understood. This wasn't dinner. This wasn't business. This was a test. And they had already decided what would happen if I failed it. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence at my parents' table was never empty. It was tactical. It existed to make the other person fill it, with doubt, with apologies, with submission. I didn't. "I can't sign this," I said. Not loudly, not emotionally, just clearly. My father leaned back in his chair. "You can," he replied. "You just don't want to." "There's a difference," I said. "And you know it." He waved a hand, dismissive. "This is a short-term bridge. 6 months, maybe less. The lenders understand projections." "They understand risk," I corrected. "They don't understand fabricated collateral. My mother exhaled sharply, as if I were being intentionally difficult. Elena, you always do this.
You turn everything into a lecture.
I closed the folder and slid it back across the table. This isn't a lecture. It's my license. If I certify this and the loan collapses, I'm liable, not you.
Me.
My father stood. He was taller than me, and he knew it. He had used that fact my entire life. Never violently, never obviously. Just enough to remind me where power sat in the room.
You didn't get where you are without us,
he said.
Your education, your connections, your career.
I met his eyes. I got where I am by refusing to do this. That was when the tone shifted. My mother set her glass down hard on the sideboard.
Do you have any idea what this family has built?
She snapped.
You think your principles matter more than everything we've sacrificed?
Yes, I said. The word landed heavier than I expected. My father's jaw tightened.
If you walk away from this,
he said quietly,
you walk away from us.
I stood. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm refusing to commit fraud. I expected shouting, accusations, emotional theater. Instead, my father nodded once. Then we're done. I turned toward the front hall. The door was locked. That should have been my first clue that they had planned this far in advance. I reached for my phone to call a rideshare. The screen lit up, but there was no signal. I frowned, tried again, then watched a system message appear. This device has been deactivated by the account holder. I stared at it. I was still on the family plan. I had never bothered to change it. A convenience I hadn't questioned. A tether I hadn't noticed. Behind me, I heard the front door unlock. I opened it. A suitcase sat on the porch. My suitcase. Packed. Zipped. Heavy. I turned back just in time to see my father step away from the door, and my mother already walking back toward the dining room. The door closed. The lock slid into place. I stood there longer than I want to admit, staring at my own reflection in the glass. 31 years old. Professionally licensed. Financially independent. At least, I had thought I was. I dragged the suitcase down the steps and loaded it into my car. I didn't cry. I was too busy realizing something far more unsettling. They hadn't reacted. They had executed. By the time I reached the end of the driveway, my phone was dead. My access was gone, and every system I relied on was suddenly very quiet. They hadn't kicked me out in anger. They had erased me. Efficiently, calmly, and with practice. And as I drove into the dark, one thought settled in with disturbing clarity. They had always known this might happen. Which meant they had also planned for what came next. I slept in my car that night, not because I had nowhere to go, at least not yet, but because I needed silence before making decisions. I parked 2 streets away from my apartment and sat there, engine off, watching the dashboard clock tick forward. My phone was useless. My contacts lived behind a screen I no longer owned. By morning, I was calm. That should have scared me. It didn't. I showered at my gym, dressed in the same neutral suit I wore to audits, and walked into my office at Axiom Governance Group as if nothing had happened. Routine has a way of convincing people you still belong. The security gate didn't open. I tried again. Same red light. Elena? I turned. It was Paul, the floor manager. He wouldn't meet my eyes. HR asked me to walk you upstairs. he said quietly.
You don't have access right now.
Why? I asked, though the answer was already assembling itself in my head.
There's been a complaint,
he said.
conflict of interest.
Of course there was. Human resources didn't bother with pleasantries. A conference room. 2 people I didn't recognize. 1 legal representative. My company laptop already sitting on the table, powered down. You're being placed on administrative suspension pending review, the HR director said. Effective immediately. For what? I asked. She slid a single page toward me. It accused me of attempting to improperly influence compliance outcomes involving Ward Meridian Consortium. I didn't laugh. I didn't argue. I simply looked at the timestamp. Filed at 9:14 p.m., the night before. Before I had even left my parents' driveway. This was prepared in advance, I said. The legal representative adjusted his glasses.
That's not relevant.
It was the most relevant thing in the room. They confiscated my credentials. Disabled my internal access. Escorted me out through a side elevator used for deliveries. By noon, my professional identity no longer existed. I went to the bank next. My debit card was declined. The teller tried again, then frowned. I'm sorry, Ms. Ward. This account is restricted. So was my savings, my credit line. Even the emergency account I'd opened years ago, just in case. Every financial thread traced back to a signature, a cosign, a legacy institution my father sat comfortably inside. I sat in my car afterward and let the pieces settle. This wasn't retaliation. It was containment. They weren't trying to punish me. They were trying to make me irrelevant before I could speak. That was when I remembered the token. It had been sitting in the side pocket of my wallet for years. Heavy, industrial, and strangely unmarked. A small steel rectangle my grandfather, Henry Ward, had pressed into my palm 14 years earlier.
For emergencies,
he'd said. No explanation. No ceremony. At the time, I had smiled politely and stored it away, assuming it was symbolic. A relic. A sentimental artifact from a man who never trusted banks, but somehow owned half the land beneath them. That afternoon, sitting in my car with no job, no access, and no protection, the weight of it felt different. Not sentimental. Functional. By evening, my parents' attorney sent a message. Polite, measured, almost kind. A suggestion that I reconsider my position for the sake of stability. An offer to assist with the transition. I didn't respond. I drove instead. Not toward my parents, not toward my office, toward the address engraved faintly on the back of the steel token. Northgate Legacy Holdings. I didn't know what waited there. I only knew one thing with absolute certainty. If my parents had gone to this much effort to erase me, it meant there was still something they were afraid I might reach. Northgate Legacy Holdings did not look like a bank. There was no digital signage, no ATMs, no lines of anxious people clutching folders. The building sat quietly between 2 modern glass towers, its stone facade older, heavier, almost stubborn. A place that had survived trends by ignoring them. I parked 3 blocks away, not because I was nervous, because I was careful. The steel token felt cold in my palm as I approached the door. For a moment, I wondered if this was nothing. A sentimental artifact I had finally decided to overvalue out of desperation. If that was the case, I would walk out, quietly. I stepped inside.
The lobby was silent in a way that felt intentional. Polished stone floors, dark wood panels, no screens, no visible security. Just a long counter and a man in a tailored suit who looked up the moment I crossed the threshold. "Yes?" he asked, already preparing to redirect me. I didn't speak. I placed the steel token on the counter. The sound it made was not loud, but it was final. The man froze. Not theatrically. Not dramatically. His fingers stopped mid-motion above the keyboard. His expression didn't change. His posture did. Shoulders straighter. Breath slower. "Please wait," he said. And this time, it wasn't a suggestion. He didn't touch the token. He made a call instead. Within seconds, a door behind the counter opened, and an older man stepped out. Silver hair. Controlled movements. The kind of presence that didn't need volume to command space. "Ms. Ward?" he asked. "Yes?" "I'm Thomas Hale, Managing Director," he said. "If you'll follow me." He didn't ask for identification. He didn't ask how I got the token. He led me down a short hallway into a private room with no windows and a single table. When the door closed behind us, the lock engaged softly. That was when I understood this wasn't about access. It was about protocol. "Before we proceed," Hale said, sitting across from me, "I need to confirm whether you are here under normal access or distress conditions." I hesitated. "I don't know what that means," I said truthfully. He slid a small keypad toward me. "Your grandfather would have explained it if he thought you'd ever need it." I remembered the sequence instantly. Not because I had practiced it, but because he had made me repeat it until I was annoyed. I entered the numbers. The room changed. Hale's eyes moved to the screen beside him. He didn't react immediately. He simply stared, then slowly exhaled. "I see," he said. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "No," he replied carefully. "Nothing is wrong." He turned the screen toward me. I didn't understand the number at first. Too many zeros. Too much distance between meaning and comprehension. Then he spoke. "The Henry Ward Legacy Trust currently holds assets valued at approximately $940 million. I didn't feel excitement. I felt gravity. "This account," Hale continued, "is blind, irrevocable, and unknown to anyone outside this institution, including your parents." I nodded once. Not in triumph, in understanding. My grandfather hadn't left me money. He had left me insulation. And for the first time since I stood on that porch with a suitcase, I realized something crucial. My parents hadn't erased me. They had simply removed their protection. And now, they no longer controlled what happened next. Northgate did not ask me what I wanted to do. That, I learned quickly, was the point. The trust had been designed to function without emotion. No advisors leaning forward with excitement. No suggestions framed as opportunities. Just systems, protocols, and an assumption that the person sitting across the table understood restraint. I did. The first thing I did was nothing. I didn't move money. I didn't make calls. I didn't contact my parents. Silence in my family had always meant disapproval. Now it meant distance. Within 48 hours, my attorney, Samuel Roth, had been retained through channels I didn't have to touch. He didn't ask me what I wanted to destroy. He asked what I wanted protected. "My license," I said. "My name. My autonomy.
He nodded once.
Then we let the rest unfold.
Axiom Governance Group received my response before I spoke to them directly.
Documentation, timelines, metadata, independent audit trails that predated the complaint filed against me. The ethics inquiry reversed itself quietly, without apology.
My suspension was lifted. My parents' attorney reached out again, this time less patient. There were suggestions of reconciliation, of family mediation, of misunderstandings that could be smoothed over if we all acted reasonably.
I declined, politely, through counsel. Meanwhile, something else began to happen. The Trust's Asset Management Division initiated a routine compliance review of land collateral tied to several infrastructure projects. Projects I recognized immediately. Projects that sat beneath Ward Meridian Consortium's most aggressive loans. I had no authority over that review. That mattered. When irregularities surfaced, misaligned valuations, circular guarantees, incomplete disclosures, they were flagged automatically. Reports were sent where reports were required to go. I did not intervene. My parents tried a different tactic. A letter arrived, handwritten, from my mother. She spoke of regret, of health concerns, of how this stress was affecting your father. She didn't apologize. She asked me to come home. I placed the letter in a drawer and didn't respond. Weeks passed. Banks became cautious. Partners delayed meetings. Financing tightened. No headlines. No raids.